Stars of Science, and it's an inventor show. It's like one of those singer shows, but it's for people who invent things. And he invented a device to tune an Arabic stringed instrument. He's a musician and an engineer, and it's just beautiful what he's made. And they have many other winners, but I think it's because there's public voting, but they're nearly always great human ideas rather than that's a very clever piece of technology that you can use in that process there that nobody sees. This is a big hit in America. You'll find this all over things like Wired magazines, Little Bits. It's Ada Bader, who is a Lebanese artist and technologist. She's an artist that makes things with technology, and she taught in the American communication school, and she taught technology to designers. And from her experience of teaching, she realised that electronics is really intimidating because it's soldering irons, all these little components, logic circuits. So she made something like Lego, where it's very sophisticated. You can quite easily make an MP3 player or any kind of device, really, with these components, and it's open source, so people are always making more components. And ironically, it's the first piece of her work to get into the Museum of Modern Art in New York, even though it's a toy, and it retails on Amazon, and it got $4 million of investment, and it's very cute. I met this guy, XT Sozluk, this is Sedat, this is one of the top 5 internet sites in Turkey. It's the only one which isn't Facebook or eBay or Twitter, or Twitter isn't in the top 5. And it was, before Wikipedia, an idea like Wikipedia that's much better than Wikipedia. I think it's just one of the best ideas I've ever seen on the internet. And it started with, he wanted to write some blogs. And he was a technologist, he's a very brilliant technologist. He was hired by Microsoft to go to America to work on their core operating system, which is how he escaped national service and being a soldier. And then he had this hobby since the mid-1990s for a site where people can publish articles, and he had one rule: it must be like a dictionary definition. So, for instance, for the Prime Minister of Turkey, Mr. Erdogan, there are 1,000 comments, but they're all defining. In fact, recently he won a court case because there was a definition of another politician which said 2 words, idiot and bigot. And they won the court case, he told me, because the lawyer said, well, he is an idiot and he is a bigot. And the judge agreed. But it's become this open forum where Turkey talks about politics, and it's all this game, this rule. You can say anything you want, so long as it's like a dictionary definition. The first ever entry was pick, weird plastic thing you play the guitar with. And that's how it all started. It has about 3 million contributors. It is unbelievably big. It's the main place where everybody in Turkey talks about everything. But it's just a beautiful, simple idea of a very human idea. And at the bottom of the site it says, everything here is untrue. Because he said it's all about learning to have your own opinion. It's not about facts. It's about, he thinks this, I think that. It's about really understanding being a citizen. It's also, a lot of them are very funny. Some translations of the book. I met many brilliant digital agencies and inventions. This was one I liked called Game of Your Life, where the brief was, we have a new university. So that's a disaster, because all the university marketing says, come to our university, here are people who went here who were successful. Now they're the Prime Minister, or they're a top scientist, or Nobel Prize winners, and they're new, so they have no case studies. So they created a future case study. It was the first time the Facebook timeline had been used in the future, and you use a game, and it says, like here it says, do you want to geek or party? You want to go to the party or the lectures, and from the decisions you make, it generates stories, and then you got a future CV of how will your life turn out. And people came to pitch. 250,000 people took part in this. They got a number of the top 100 students in Turkey, which nobody expected them to do. It was a big success. And it also said, this is one university which is relevant. You've grown up on digital media. Here is something that understands your world. And but it's one of the classic digital strategy which is to change the buying process, like Groupon, just change the way that people buy things like eBay. This is change the way that people choose a university. Adapt with. I can sense from my timing, I'm going to speed up slightly. Adapting is what you would expect, I think, countries in the emerging world to be doing, which is to be adapting the best practice from the West. What interested me was how deeply, like the Japanese concept of re-engineering, how deeply they'd internalised it and were starting really to go past it. But the thing that somebody said to me is, we have no, and I was saying, do you mean no pride? And he said, no, we have a lot of pride, but we have no qualms. You know, we didn't say 2,000 years ago, well, the Romans have done roads, so we don't do roads. And, you know, with the internet and other things, we adopt them. We can see the value if it hasn't been done here, but then we make it work here, and then they keep going, and then after a while you see things that are very new. This is the mall of the Emirates, and I interviewed the person who is the sustainability head for this construction group. I sort of knew that the Middle East was famous for shopping malls. I didn't know that these were some of the greenest buildings in the world. This is one of the only large shopping malls that has a LEED Gold certificate, which is a very high standard of eco-building. And he showed me how they'd taken all the Western standards like LEEDs and then started to develop their own, because actually the problem they have endless energy where they are, from the sun, from the oil and so forth. There are many difficulties with water, and many of the standards were written for places like England and America, which are quite wet, so they had to change the standards, and they've been developing them. But this is the centre for world, not just building, but town planning in a sustainable way. But it all came with starting with, what are all the best practices? Let's get the experts in, and then they develop on. This is Sequence, who are a group of technologists, all of whom had an interest, and business people who had a successful internet career somewhere else, that decided there should be an internet sector in Beirut. So basically they've built one, and they've done it from the ground. They've copied a model from Silicon Valley called Y Combinator, which is an accelerator model, but they changed the whole process hugely. The bit that I liked is at every stage of the process they throw huge parties, because they realise there isn't a Silicon Valley, so we need to create one, and we need to get people together, and if you want to get people together in Beirut, you have to throw the best parties. So they say, the best parties in the region. And very successful in developing new models, internet models. This is a similar thing in Jordan called Oasis 500. I like the fact it's got a slide. This is called the Silicon Valley of the Middle East, and it's really interesting how there's this sort of humility. They say, well, we have many brilliant engineers and scientists, but they haven't grown up in America, and they read in the magazines, but they really don't understand how the dot-com world works. And we don't want them to spend 12 or 15 years finding out. So they take them on tours of America. They just go and meet all the big dot-coms, and they just take the people there. And many of the brilliant people I met had done that journey themselves. They call it the reverse brain drain. The person from Yemex Betty had a big career in Silicon Valley, and then he went home and did what he knew how to do. It's not copying, it's just what he was trained to do. This is another example, Marcophony. You need to, if any of you run a large company, be very careful about relocating one of your top managers back to their home country. This was founded by Sina Afra, who was one of the leaders of eBay in Europe. And they said, why don't you base yourself in Istanbul? And a month later, he launched what is rated one of the 100 most exciting web startups in Europe. It just won an award for the best startup in the Middle East. It sells 50,000 items per day. It is a logistical, only somebody who'd run eBay could understand how to build that kind of business from nothing in 3 or 4 years. It's the fastest growing company by far in Turkey, and he says that it makes actually eBay look slow. And he knew how to do it. He just hired other people who knew how to do it, and now they've done it. It was nothing that complicated. But it's the tenacity. This comes back to the necessity thing. I said, how did you build your audience? It's a brilliant model. It's flash sales. It's worked everywhere. But how did you build an audience? There was no fashion online in Turkey. All the e-commerce was men. They were all buying electronics. There were very few women customers. How did you build it? He said, very simple. We had a team, maybe 50 people. Each person went to each person they knew, their parents, their sisters, their friends, they sat with them with the laptop open and they said, let's join you in the system. No,